Now that we understand the basics of working with forms, we're ready to implement the create actions in our controller. You'll remember that the create part of CRUD is made up of two standard Rails actions, new and create, and they work in conjunction with each other. New displays a web form that we can then click submit, and submit will submit the form to the create action, which will take care of the processing. Let's focus on the first half of that in this movie, the new action. Let's start by adding our form template. So inside the views, inside subjects, I'm just going to add a new one, which is going to be new.html.erb. Now, the form that I'm going to use is exactly the same form that we saw in the last movie that we were using as an example. I'm using form4, the subject, passing in the URL as action create, so we're going to submit this to the create action, and then the variable f here will be equal to subject as we go through the rest of the form. So for the subject, give me a text field for the name. On the subject, give me a text field for position. Using the subject, give me a text field for visible. And at the end, I've got a submit tag, and then I end the form4 code block. Again, it's exactly what we looked at before. I've just added in a table here to give it a little bit of formatting. I've also put a link up at the top that will say back to list that would take me back to the list. So that's it. Let's save it. Remember that you can pause if you need to copy that HTML down. And let's switch over to our controller now. Subject's controller. Let's add in a new action here for new. So what do we need to put in this new action? What instance variable do we need to instantiate and have ready for our form template? Well, there's actually two answers. The first is we don't need to put anything there. Let's save it and just try it. Let's go to our terminal. Notice I'm already in the root of my application, Rails server. I'll go into Firefox, and let's go to localhost 3000/subjects/new. So there we are. There's our new subject form. Came up just fine. It didn't need an instance variable there. But the other answer is I think you should always instantiate the subject object. At subject equals subject.new, just a new one. Now why do this? The reason why is that in our form template, the form4 object will look for the instance variable subject. And if it finds at subject, then it will use its values to pre-populate name, position, and visible. Now those may be blank, but we don't necessarily know that. That might be something that's been set in the model or something that's set in the database so that these values have been given default values that we may want to present to the user and let them have the opportunity to edit. Let's try it, for example. Let's save this. Let's go back and let's just reload the page. Notice now I'd set my database to have visible be equal to false. So Rails picked up on that. It knew that visible was set to be false, and it went ahead and gave me that value in this field. So you can see what I mean. So I think it's a good idea to instantiate any object where you're going to be using form4 on that object. Now we also could put in other values here. For example, we could say, well, actually new, and I want to set the name equal to default, right? So we'll save that. And now we have a default value dropped in there. So having it there also gives us a place to put in default values if we decide we want them. So that's all there is to creating the new action. We just instantiate everything we need, we display the web form, and now we're ready to create the subject. When we submit this form, it will submit those post values to the create action. Let's see how to add that in the next movie.